All right, man. Welcome back for episode 8, I think it is.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
this last few weeks, Ordinals and Inscriptions have dominated the Bitcoin cryptocurrency space on Twitter and on YouTube. It's sort of blowing up. There's a bunch of controversy. So, um, what I'll do is I'll go over like how I understand this whole thing works, and then we can sort of discuss what we think, after we sort of lay out the different pieces of this whole project. It's an incredibly interesting project, and well, I'll tell you what my thoughts are, but let me sort of go over the explanation of what this is, right? So the word ordinal refers to just the place or the position of an item on a list, any list at all, right? So if you have a shopping list with 10 things on it, and milk is the second item on the list, we can say that milk has an ordinal value of 2 on your shopping list. So it's just a general math term that describes the position of an item on a list or on a set. So that's all that is. It's not a Bitcoin specific term. But what the Ordinal project is doing, and this is on ordinal.com, what they're doing is that they're assigning number to each Satoshi. And the number corresponds to the order in which the Satoshi was created. So for example, if you think about the Genesis block, the first Bitcoin block, there are 5 billion Satoshis in that block. And the Ordinal project has labeled those Satoshis as having ordinal values from from 0 to 5 billion. Correct. So each Satoshi that is mined is counted in the order that it was created. And these days, since we've been at this for about 13 years now, these days the Satoshis that are being minted have ordinal values of like 129 quadrillion, right? And every time and there's more Satoshis, that the numbers just keep on sort of increasing. But it's sort of important to understand that this ordering of Satoshis into ordinals is an entirely external process, right? They're just somebody on the outside counting them and saying, okay, this is the order in which they were created. There's no data within the Bitcoin blockchain that has like a section that says this is the ordinal number of the Satoshi, right? So this is all someone looking at from outside and saying, okay, this is the first Satoshi, this is the second Satoshi, and it's imposing strictly on this sort of external uh, protocol or mechanism, right? So that's what like ordinals are, right, in terms of how they apply to Satoshis. But of course, this whole ordinal project is sort of kicked off into NFTs, right? And so now that we have sort of the taxonomy or nomenclature of how we're going to label Satoshis, next step is to track specific Satoshis once they move. So you've labeled them now in the order of creation, but how do you keep track of the ordinal numbers when they move? Okay. And so just like the ordinal project introduced this arbitrary convention of labeling, like we're just going to count in the order they were created, introduce another convention, again, completely arbitrary, in order to track the movement of the Satoshis from wallet A to wallet B. Okay, so let's, for example, say I'm sending you a bunch of Satoshis, right? Each Satoshi will have an ordinal number according to the ordinal.com website. It'll have an ordinal number. And the convention that they decided on to keep track of these Satoshis is that the first sat in the input, so my wallet, as I'm sending it to you, the first sat in the input will correspond to the first sat in the output. So the first sat in my wallet, after I send it to you, that will correspond to the first sat in your wallet after it's been sent. And the second sat in the input will correspond to the second sat in the output, and on and on and on, thereby preserving the ordinal numbers, even if they change addresses. Now, one of the other things they decided to do is that the transaction fees, which go to the miners, they have decided that they're going to count the last few Satoshis or whatever number of Satoshis it is that is taken for a fee. That's going to be just locked off the end of the string of Satoshis that are being moved. So the last, whatever 100 billion or whatever number of Satoshis are going to go to the miner. So that's again the convention that they have. All right. So we have now a labeling convention uh, for saying this is a specific Satoshi, and we have a convention to decide how to preserve the labeling Okay, so these are all artificial conventions. None of this is a blockchain, right? This is all externally imposed. But if we all agree that we're going to start thinking about Satoshis in this way, you have essentially made the Satoshis non-fungible, because now there is a way to view Satoshis so that each one is unique. Albeit, again, I want to emphasize repeatedly, this is an entirely external and entirely arbitrary convention. Now, with these set of rules in place, all right, you can spin up a block explorer and spin up some Python scripts, and you can set to work on labeling and tracking every single Satoshi that has ever existed. And you can actually go to ordinals.com, which is, this entire project has been created and is run by the gentleman called Corey Rodimer, and he started Ordinals.com. So you can go to this site and you can actually, whenever a block is minted, you can actually double click the link and it'll give you a list of all of the ordinals or the Satoshis and their corresponding ordinal values in sort of just a list, right? So, so that's what ordinals are. But the project has gone a step further, and they've created yet another convention that assigns a specific Satoshi to some data, and they can put that data on the Bitcoin blockchain, right? That data could be a JPEG, it could be anything, basically anything that a web browser can return can be assigned a specific Satoshi and then be uploaded to the blockchain. So how do they do that part? How do they connect a Satoshi to data like a JPEG, a specific Satoshi to a data like a JPEG? Again, coming back to another arbitrary convention, how they're doing it is that they take the ordinal value. If you want to mint, or you want to upload a JPEG and connect it to a Satoshi, what you do is you take the ordinal number of the Satoshi that you want to assign it to, you take the data that you want to assign it to, you hash them together, and then you sign the hash. That way, your signature basically is connected to the Satoshi and is connected to the hash of the data. So it sort of fuses all of that into a signature. And then you take the signature, you add your pub key to it, and you add the actual data that you want to upload, and you present it to the blockchain to be picked up by the meme pool as a transaction. Okay, so that last part is a bit convoluted, but those set of steps will allow any block explorer to say that, okay, this wallet married basically this data to this Satoshi. So it's three different things converging in one transaction. So that's sort of how they packaged this stuff together. All right. So now this thing is going to be uploaded to the blockchain. All right. So whatever, it's a JPEG, a PDF file, anything that a web browser can return, that is actually uploaded to the blockchain. All right. Now the data is stored in the witness part of the blockchain. So as you know, we had segregated witness a few years ago, and then what segregated or SegWit did is that it increased the block size from 1 MB to 4 MB, right? So the extra 3 MB is all of these segregated witness data. So that's all the signatures and all the other stuff. Whereas the 1 MB is the sort of the core transaction, the UTXO sort of transaction layer. So if you do all these steps and if you have an explorer that understands all these rules, you can essentially crawl through the blockchain and look for data in the witness part of the blockchain and extract the data and display it on a website. So you basically have explorer. I'm trying to avoid using the word NFT, but I think we should just go ahead and introduce it. Let us just assume we're calling these things NFTs, right? So Rodimer calls them digital artifacts, which I think I actually like that word a lot better, term a lot better. Let's call them digital artifacts. So you can have an explorer that crawls through the blockchain, it combs through the witness data, sees if there's anything there that can be displayed on a website, and then just goes and displays it, right? So you can actually basically just have a block explorer that displays all of the data in the segregated witness section of it, right? So, and that data is assigned to, because of all the maneuvering that you did, assigned to your wallet, and it assigned to a specific Satoshi in your wallet as well. And voila, you have JPEGs on Bitcoin. All right. So, I think that's probably the excuse me. I think that's probably the simplest way to explain it. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Did that make sense? Was it a bit too convoluted, or did that sort of come across?
Yeah, no, yeah, you definitely did your homework. Yeah, the one part I was curious on myself. You've definitely done more homework than I have. Last week, work's been crazy. I know, like you said, with SegWit, there was just the air gap for more data. To my knowledge, and I could be wrong, I thought part of the main reason they kicked out Taproot was for stuff like this. Is I guess with the inscriptions, are those more tied into SegWit, or is that like with a
Yeah.
Taproot
So
upgrade for that
you know,
extra room?
yeah. So marrying your key, your signature with the public key, with the data, with the Satoshi, all of that, like melding. That's called an inscription. All right. So when you combine those three disparate pieces of data together, the actual data you want to upload, the Satoshi you want to assign it to, then you put your own signature there, public key in there to sort of bring all those together and send it as a transaction. That process is an inscription. All right. So that inscription is could be a JPEG, and because we've had this whole NFT thing going on for the last few years on Ethereum, the easiest sort of way of thinking about it is like, well, we've got JPEGs or we've got NFTs on Bitcoin, right? So, I think Rodimer has a good point, not calling them NFTs and calling them digital artifacts because, and this is one of the points he makes, which is very good, is no one has created a token, right? So NFTs on Ethereum, for example, have their own sort of ERC20 token that's created, and then there's like images assigned to that token. So there's a token generation thing that happens. There's no token here, right? All there is that this external system has decided that we're going to label Satoshis this way and we can do inscriptions this way. If you choose to ignore all of this, right? Like you say, well, I don't believe in any, I reject these conventions. There's nothing preventing you from like behaving in that way, right? So this process is not necessarily interfering with any part of like the Bitcoin project or the Bitcoin, core sort of project. I mean, nothing is actually interfered with. You can completely ignore this. You don't have to interact with it or engage with it in any way at all. So there's no token to buy, right? So in fact, for example, you could, for example, end up getting, for example, you buy some Bitcoin on Coinbase and then you download it to your wallet, right? Or you send it to your wallet rather. Um, and then you find out whatever Coinbase sent you, there's some Satoshis in there that may have been assigned an inscription by somebody like years ago. I mean, I'm talking about the future, right? So imagine a future where everyone's doing these inscriptions. You may have Satoshis running around that have inscriptions assigned to them. And you may not care at all, but they will still, according to the uh, you know, the Rodimer's sort of system, they may still have an inscription that you could track down. So there's no native token that a new token that needs to be minted. And in that sense, it's sort of superior to the Ethereum based NFTs, and also superior in the sense that the data or the JPEG, or whatever it is you want to inscribe, is actually on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's not stored in
Yeah, big
some
difference.
server.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah. So anyway, that's sort of this is very new. I mean, I went through a lot of his videos actually, and the first time he was introducing this concept, at least the first evidence I found of it was about 5, 6 months ago. He's been working on this for a long time, and it seems like he's developed a lot of these ideas. Uh, that have been pretty highly evolved ideas actually. Some of the, some of this stuff is very interesting because it raises the issue of rare satoshis. Right. So what is a rare satoshi? Right. So for example, the first satoshi that is ever minted after a halving event, right? You could totally identify such a satoshi very easily. You know exactly when the halving is. There's going to be some miner that produces a Bitcoin right at that's going to be the first block that's produced after the halving event, and that block, that amount of Bitcoin is going to have a satoshi that is the first satoshi created, uh, after the halving, right? Or for example, you could have every now and then there's a concordance between a halving event and a difficulty adjustment. It's very rare that it happens at exactly the same time. But if that were to happen, that would be a super rare Satoshi, right? The first Satoshi that's minted after this. Or you could come up with all sorts of other things. The first Satoshi that was minted on uh, the Genesis block's birthday or whatever, right? I mean, you can just come up with any sort of random ways of how some Satoshis are rarer than other Satoshis, right? So it started off with the idea being that you can have these very rare and super rare and legendary rare and epic rare Satoshis. Some Satoshis that only come up like once in 100 years, for example, something like that, right? Uh, so you can combine that idea as well. Some Satoshis in of themselves might just be valuable because they're rare. That's all if you buy into this convention system that he created, right? And uh, from what I understand, there's already 16,000 inscriptions on Bitcoin that have come up, and we're just talking about the last few, maybe 2 weeks. It's going really fast. This whole thing is evolving very quickly, and there's been a lot of. I know you and Jacob talked a little bit about inscriptions and NFTs on Bitcoin last week as well. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Good for Bitcoin, bad for Bitcoin. What are your what is your gut instinct here?
Mm. It's a tough one, man. Yeah, to be honest, yeah, it definitely gave me a good overview, and there's some more homework I have to do on it. But the last week, the main thing I've seen, I don't know about you, there's been for lack of a better word, a good pissing match between just the old school Bitcoin maxis and the OGs, the James Lopes, the Adam Backs, Udiverse, and Adam Back are having a good pissing contest, and it's weird, man. I kind of see both schools of thought. For example, Adam Back and some of the old cypherpunks are like, this is going to turn into, Circus Soleil. This is going to turn into some, screwed up Lord of the Flies. Like, look what happened with 2017 ICO. Look what happened the last, 24 months with NFTs. Obviously this could turn into, wine and circus. But to your point, there and Udi and some others brought this up. The main thing is, you don't really have to interact with it. Could it possibly affect just I guess the amount of liquid Bitcoin that's out there? For example, like if people are hodling and people want to make more inscriptions, obviously whatever's out on the market, maybe it could drive the price up, like fees and stuff a little bit. That's kind of debatable. But to your point, it's like this could at the moment it could be a more positive outcome because it's or have just a more positive ring at the moment because this. I agree with you. I don't like the word like NFTs. It's kind of tarnished now. But what would you say? Digital artifacts or same thing?
Yeah.
It's this could get digital artifacts NFTs right for the first time because it's actually on a blockchain. Because I don't know about you, but like 18 months a year ago, we had some of the NFT guys at the meetups. I'd be talking to some of them, and these guys would be like, "Oh yeah, I put 5, 10 Ethereum into XYZ project," and again, people's like liquidity, their assets, they do what they want. But I would ask them like, "Oh, aren't you kind of like nervous that it's been shown that let's just say like half the stuff on a Ethereum is like basically in the cloud or in someone's computer?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, it's not like on the blockchain. Like some are pretty spread out, but there's a couple projects that it's like on 2 or 3 computers." They're like, "No, it's not." I'm like, "Well, you should do your homework." But I mean, I think that's the thing too. I think, and I know Adam Back deleted this tweet. There's a lot of people that are saying some miners are pissed at this and they're just going to start blocking or not taking stuff, and it's I don't know. It goes back to my thing on like why I'm hesitant sometimes to call myself a Bitcoin maxi because they thump that libertarian drum a lot, and then something like this comes up. I get their
Mhm.
concerns. NFTs just blew up 18 months ago. SEC is coming down on Kraken right now. Like we got a lot of shit coming our way, but I think you know same thing 10 years ago. We didn't want SEC and the fat cats in New York to regulate us to hell and back. You need let innovation grow. So it's like, yeah, maybe the next 12, 18 months, this could kind of be a far in the wind. But you give it 5 or 10 years, looking back, it could be like, oh, this was like what actually helped, give Bitcoin a leg up, helped make it mainstream, blah, blah, blah. So, I get why Adam Back was kind of having a pissing contest on Twitter the last week, but uh, you know, I don't know. I think that's the thing with Bitcoin. It's like it's what you make it, and same thing too. I think if like not saying this would cause it, but 2016, right before I got into space, a lot of the miners wanted speed, a lot of them wanted security. we had a block size war, we had a fork, and the market decided. So not saying that's going to happen, but if people think this is like a good bad scenario, maybe there's a fork, and from now to the 24 25 bear market, we decide like, is it good or bad for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I don't know that it would result necessarily in a fork. I mean, anything is possible, right? So, uh, there's a famous Max Pierre Rochard, I think. He's also Austin-based, actually. So he's been uh, he's been talking about this a little bit as well. And I was listening to one of his podcasts where he was talking, and some of the pushback from the so-called OG maxis, right, of which Adam back, for example, is, the OG of the OGs, if he's not
Oh yeah.
Satoshi himself, is that, Bitcoin is supposed to be this tool for financial freedom. It's supposed to be ultrasound money. And what the hell are these monkey pigs, doing on this pristine Bitcoin sort of blockchain, right? You guys are just ruining what is supposed to be a serious project, right? Supposed to financialize the unfinancialized, bank the unbanked, and here you are with your monkey JPEGs, right? So I am sympathetic to their uh, sort of knee-jerk revulsion, I suppose, is a good way to describe the reaction, because the Ethereum based or Solana based, or pick your L1 based NFT movement, has been fraught with so much bullshit, right? There are all these projects that are coming up with NFTs, and you're like, well,
Yeah, projects. Yeah.
what is the point of these? Well, and they're going to say some horse shit like, well, it's got utility and we're going to build a community around it. And maybe that's fine for one or two projects, but it's not going to happen for 10,000 NFT projects, right? And a whole lot of the NFT space in 2021 was all just a cash grab. That's all it was. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
no two bones about it. I don't have any problem in principle against NFTs, but there's no doubt in my mind that 99% of everything that happened in NFT space in 21 was all speculative mania. It was all cash grabs, and that's all it was much more than that. So when you hear about like, oh, NFT has come to Bitcoin, the immediate reaction is going to be, oh shit, like the NFT people have found a way to pollute Bitcoin, right? So I think that's where they're coming from, and I think that's understandable. But one of the things I've also started to realize, I've been following Adam back on Twitter over this entire thing pretty closely. And as you said, he deleted a tweet the other day where I think he says miners should refuse to take any
Yeah,
transactions
ban.
that have inscriptions on them, right? So he was basically, you should voluntarily not do it, right? Which is, something that you could do. You can't really enforce it, even if you're Adam back. You can't just tell everyone what to do. That's not how this works. And of course, he deleted the tweet, but I think he's starting to come around and saying, he's like, uh, that's the power of Bitcoin. It's decentralized, and if this is what people want to turn it into, then no one can stop it, right? Because they're not doing anything that violates protocol. They're not trying to like spam it or anything. And I think also some of the proponents of the whole NFT on Bitcoin movement are starting to say that, well, this could actually bring a whole bunch of people that got into crypto for NFTs into Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin didn't have NFTs at all. And you could even argue that this design of, delivering NFTs or hosting NFTs or whatever, right? And again, NFTs are just, it's not a perfectly accurate description of what this is because it's not a token, right? So we should, the T stands for token in NFTs, but it's not a token. So I'm just going to start using digital artifact, and everyone listening should understand. I'm actually talking about the thing that used to be called NFT on Ethereum is digital artifact on Bitcoin. I'm very happy with that relabeling. I think that as as NFTs or digital artifacts on Bitcoin, the execution is better on the Bitcoin side of things than it ever was on Ethereum, right? And Rodimer goes into some
Mm-hmm.
detail explaining this, but the very first one is that the data is actually on the blockchain. It's not hosted by Amazon Web Services, who may, take it down. It's actually there on the blockchain. The external sort of arbitrary indexing system that you created can find it for you, to the end of time, right? So in that sense, it's actually executed really well. The other thing is that, you can only mint one digital artifact at a time, right? Because there's only so much that the witness, part of the block, the witness part of the block can only hold 3 MB, right? So assuming you fill the entire 3 MB, there's only so much you can put in there. But whatever you put in there is one unit of thing, right? So it's one digital artifact, right? You can't put 100, JPEG monkeys into the one witness part of the block. You just can't do that. So every time you make an inscription, you are basically just minting one NFT or digital artifact, right? As opposed to like, you can mint 10,000 on Ethereum all at once, right? So it has this weird thing of being actually more scarce than anything you could mint on Ethereum because, only one transaction can just mint one NFT. And, this entire infrastructure is being built out. I was just listening to one of his most recent podcast where he's talking about how you could maybe connect one inscription to another inscription. So you can basically have sort of a tree of different inscriptions. Like there's a parent, and then the parent, and then that points to another one, or rather there's an offspring of an inscription that points to the parent, and then it just points all the way down. So the explorer could just show an entire collection. The NFTs or digital artifacts would be living on different blocks, but the convention that he created would be able to sort of collate them for you all in sort of one website, even though the data is living on different blocks. So, it's a very interesting idea. I am agnostic. Like, I'm not saying this is a great thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just have an open mind and I'm just like exploring the idea and try to sort of think about the game theory of like, where is this going to go? But having said all that, did you yourself have any sort of like concerns about data that's being encrypted as NFTs or digital artifacts, shoving aside room for like actual transactions, like real Bitcoin financial transactions, right? That has been one of the criticisms. Do you have a instinct on that?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, you mentioned it, and then like some people listening, and everyone in our group knows this. That, like you said, last 12 months, the NFT mania, it was. You could argue part of the reason it got so crazy, like we said, a lot of it wasn't on chain. It was just pie in the sky. A lot of evidence. It was just people wash trading with themselves. Blah blah blah. But if even just a trickle of that hits Bitcoin, like one thing I do agree with a lot of people. It's like, yeah, Bitcoin's not fast, it's not sexy, but it's slow and steady, and it's just kind of like a train. It gets moving. Get the hell out of the way. And like you said earlier, we've been going for 13 years, pretty strong. So to the point, it's like move fast and break things. If a lot of volume, interest, money enters this, and same thing, it starts clogging it up. And not even also from a road to hell is paved with good intentions, but not saying I might have to do more homework on this, but it could be a vector for attack for some reason. If people just want to clog up the network with just to Adam Back's point, useless monkey JPEGs, that could be an issue. But I'm like you. I'm agnostic on it right now. I think like I definitely got to do more homework on it. But one thing I will tell you is a gut reaction. This could be like a pie in the sky thing. I might have to dissect this later. But I think I've told you one of my criteria is a kind of crappy word, but I'll use it for now. Criteria for like hyper Bitcoinization in 10 years is there's all these like truly decentralized platforms. Let's just pick them: Cardano, Ethereum, like let's just say like Solana, or there's like a Solana 2.0. Like they exist in the future. There's the avalanches, right? And they all have their own little ecosystems, and there's actually like real companies and economies underneath them. Well, if you want to trade in between them, but people kind of can't agree on like a unit metric. Bitcoin, let's just say you want to just make things easy. You want to get a million Cardano for, let's just call it like 10,000 Ethereum. Bitcoin would be an just a that stable unit where everyone knows the value. Like same thing with the dollar is why people use dollars. So same thing with these ordinals. There might be some way to maybe possibly have a contract between those smart chains and then have a JPEG or some representation attached to that Satoshi. And back to our point, like there could be just an accountability factor where it's on the blockchain, you can track it. And then to our point too, there could be certain number ones, like for example, I don't know if you heard, it was LeBron James just got the NBA all-time scoring record. Some people were buying front row tickets for like $120,000. Like
Wow.
the Mayweathers of the world and Kareem. They were, so to them that's chump change. But same thing too. It's like, maybe someone takes that picture or that seat they were at. They get a JPEG of that. They put that on a Satoshi, and I see both sides of it, but I could definitely see how, like we said, I think the biggest kicker is that if this can scale on the blockchain, keep working, and not clog up the network in 5 or 10 years. Because I know we said this before, like a real big issue in '08 after all these CDOs blew up. There were towns in middle America with like dozens of houses that were sliced up like 100 different ways. So when all these banks and hedge funds blew up, people literally like cul-de-sacs of like 30, like 100 houses. People had no idea who these belonged to because they were sliced up. So to our point, like if you attached, with an ordinal, you had for just CDO or just that the mortgage of that house. Well, it's on the blockchain is verifiable. It's like, oh, Zativ's house, he bought it in May of 2020 and blah blah blah. So I'm like you, I'm agnostic to it, but I was disappointed with like Adam Bax and that. A lot of people were pissing it at first. I do think, like you said, he deleted the tweet, so maybe he's coming around. But same thing. Like a year from now, people are going to be doing it still, and it'll work, and or it won't. But I don't think it's like as toxic, I guess, lack of a better word, as like the Ethereum fork, or like I said, the original block size fork. But I was just stunned at first. Like the last week, I've been working a lot, but I went on Twitter. Just a lot of people are really aggressive to it. So I was like, am I missing something? Is there more here under the hood? But it seems like you said, it's only been out for a couple weeks, so I think right now it's still almost like in beta mode. But I could see in like 5 or 10 years how this is a stepping stone for like institutional, like legitimate like Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah, that's also one of the Rodimer talks about how this could actually maybe provide another fee structure for miners, right? So let's, for example, say you want, you really feel strongly about minting a certain NFT, and the sort of meme pool is full, and the miners are also very busy. The network is very busy. Well, maybe you just pay more money, for the miners to take your sort of inscription, and so there's now a second reason for people to decide to pay more money to the miners in order to do the work that they're doing, right? So it's no longer the miner is just sort of like picking up fees that are somewhat related to the congestion of the network. There's a whole other, like, NFTs are competing. I mean, again, digital artifacts are competing with each other to get on the blockchain. So people have said that this actually encourages miners to keep mining because now they have an alternative income stream. That's a bit of a stretch to call it an alternative income stream, but what I'm getting at is that now they're not just minting transactions, or they're not just mining for, or they're not just encoding transactions, but they're also encoding this other bit of data that has value to the person who is sending it to the miner, right? And so they may be willing to pay an extra fee because the the file is big and it's going to take up a lot of the block. And so maybe miners decide collectively that there's going to be a two-tiered structure for, if your NFT is this big, then this is how much money you have to give us. These are all things that I think will the free market will sort of decide in time by itself. So that's one of the sort of pros, in addition to, of course, people just coming onto Bitcoin thinking that, well, now we have NFTs on Bitcoin, right? And not only that, but the execution, I think, is better in this model than it has ever been on Ethereum, right? Because like I said, the file is actually on the blockchain itself. So in that sense, it's actually very positive. The downside, that a lot of people have pointed out to is, of course, you can put illegal stuff in there, right? You can put stuff there that's very inflammatory. So they've already been people talking about images of, abuse, of children could be put in there. And then all the nodes have to download those images. You could make instructions on how to, like, print a 3D gun, uh, pick or, like you could say something very inflammatory against a certain religious sect, like, you could put insulting language against the Islamic world or Muslims, and you can piss them off, and then that blasphemous thing is on Bitcoin forever, So there's ways
Wow.
in which you could, potentially sabotage in a sort of social engineering way the legitimacy of the project, right? Not that there's anything that has gone wrong with the code or the execution, but you could now start uploading, and I think uploading is probably the correct word. You could start uploading content onto the Bitcoin blockchain that is extremely problematic if it were to be found on your computer. And so one of the arguments is that, well, if law enforcement wants to decide to attack Bitcoin, well, now they have a Trojan horse in the form of these potentially inflammatory files that could do all sorts of damage, right? So that's one, counterpoint. I don't know how I feel about that, because uh, that's always been an option. It's not as if this guy came up with you could always put any sort of arbitrary amount of data into the witness pool, right? So that's already been done, but it's never actually been uh, formalized, in the way that the Ordinal project is formalizing it, right? So, but it was always possible before. But now you may see it happening at scale, and you may see it happening in ways that are deliberately meant to be uh, socially embarrassing to the Bitcoin project, right? So if you're a country and you're anti-Bitcoin, well, just go in and upload a whole bunch of incredibly inflammatory things uh, to the Bitcoin corporate. If you're severe right wing, you could put up, Hitler's Mein Kampf up there, right? The entire book can fit into a Bitcoin blockchain, right? Because the text is probably less than half a megabyte, right? So you could put the entire Mein Kampf with Hitler up there. I mean, you could put all sorts of heinous shit up there, right? And so my question is that once that happens, and it is inevitable that will happen, it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's when
Yeah.
it happens. Yeah, our government's going to use that as some sort of an excuse, right? If you're like a Muslim majority country and there's some anti-Islamic blasphemous content against the Prophet Muhammad in the Bitcoin blockchain, how are you going to feel about allowing Bitcoin nodes in your country, right? I mean, I know the Muslim world is extremely sensitive about these sort of things, right? And that's just one example off the top of my head. So I don't know how the community will deal with that and how government will approach that, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on that potential timeline.
It's almost in the same category. Like for example, the last got to keep doing math in my head because we're in 23. The last 5 years I've been in the space. I don't know. Like I remember heavily, especially like 2018, 19. I felt like it was every 2 weeks. Oh, China banned Bitcoin again. China banned Bitcoin, and like people be like, oh, they banned Bitcoin. What do you think? I'm like, there's a lot of things they ban that's pretty fucking stupid. So that's not like a good bar to jump over. And I know you heard this argument too. People go, oh man, Bitcoin can be used for drugs and child pee and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's the most versatile thing in the world to do bad things with, the U.S. dollar. And I'm not. And to your point, I think we need to be honest that like, unfortunately, it's not if, it's when that stuff happens. But I think it was Eric Voorhees. He had a good interview one time, or sorry, it was Charlie Shrem. He's being interviewed when he first started Bit Instant, and they're asking about money laundering and all this stuff, and he's like, "Well, banks made it that term. A lot of the regulations and rules we have right now are because of banks and all the f ups they've had in the last century." And he's like, and the biggest problem with all these rules and stuff we have right now is the starting presupposition is that, oh, Doug ought to, if you want to start got a business and you want to start a Chase bank account, well, prove to us you guys aren't terrorists and you're not abusing children and you don't have a negative 300 FICO score. And Charlie's like, it shouldn't be like that. It's just like with you go in a court system, if you're on the offensive you have to bring. So it's just like when people bring up these arguments, it's like, oh, it could be used for this, that, and a third. It's like, well, anything can. It's technology, and same thing too. What's been the most destructive thing in the last century, especially the last 20 years? The U.S. dollar and banks that just get to roam free like it's the Wild West. So it's
I thought
it's a
I
tough
thought
one.
it was white people.
Dude, who knows anymore? Well, I don't know. But Biden says he's everyone's nightmare right now, so it could be.
Uh,
But that's a whole other bucket of worms. But it's a weird one though, because it's like, how do you fix it? Because I think like a couple episodes ago I talked about this. I think the problem is just like free speech. Like everyone gets it or no one does. And if for example, what was, I should know this. Sorry, it was Turkey and who just had the earthquake. I should know this. blanking out right now.
Syria. Syria.
Yeah. They just, what was it? Something crazy already, like 20,000 people confirmed dead. But it's like I haven't heard a story, but it wouldn't surprise me if maybe a couple hundred thousand in like dollars in Bitcoin's been donated. Something like that is great. But then tomorrow, if China makes another spy balloon or North Korea nukes somebody, and they're like, oh, we funded this with Bitcoin. You unfortunately, not that you approve of that, but you have to be cool with it just because it's like free speech. So it's like, how do you fix it? I mean, maybe there might be a way to put something in the code, but then we also get to this weird bastardized thing where it's like it could turn into like Ethereum, where the reason they did the whole fork is because the guy found a loophole in the code, and then they basically stole his funds from him by making a new chain. So uh, it's a weird one. Like, how you fix it, I don't know. There might be some technical backdoor thing, but that's obviously way out of my
No,
premise.
yeah, no, there isn't, and that's one of the beauties of this protocol is that it does not require any changes at all to the Bitcoin code at all. It works with it. The other kind of cool thing about it as well, and it seems like I'm praising it a lot, but I'm just sort of really taken by the idea. I'm not saying it's a good thing or bad thing, but it's a very brilliant idea. I have to say, like the whole idea is very spot on. But what one of
It,
the cool things about it too is it has the same security features of Bitcoin as well, right? So you could move your digital artifact to your hardware wallet, and that's where it is. That's where it really lives, right? Or rather, your ownership of the digital artifact lives in your own hardware wallet, right? So, but to what you were saying earlier, there is really no technological change that you could make that's going to do away with the problem of people being able to put arbitrary data, some of which may be very controversial and inflammatory and illegal, onto the Bitcoin. It's an open uh, sort of blockchain, and when miners, they're not like reviewing the data that is being sent to them to see what's in it first, and then making a decision to decide if it's illegal or not legal. I mean, the miners are like in a race anyway, right, to like do the next hash. So
yeah,
any
hauling
amount of
ass.
time they spend actually trying to assess the data that they're trying to like hash, that's just like time that they don't have, because there's another miner that's not doing that, right, not spending the compute to figure out what the data actually is and then decide if it's legal or not legal. So there's no solution to inflammatory content being eventually uploaded to the blockchain. It's just a question of, to what extent is that going to happen? And if it does happen, the other thing that, I think people are not thinking through is that, say, for example, there is a malicious actor that, uploads something like, child P to the blockchain. Well, now you got the guy's address. You got his Bitcoin address, right? So the minute this guy ever interacts with the real world, right, with the non-Bitcoin financial services, you could basically just have a blacklist of every single Bitcoin wallet that has participated in Child P. And once you have those addresses, the minute those addresses are ever used, to interact with the real world, you basically caught the guy, right? Every single exchange, every single bank will have a list of these wallets. Like, well, these wallets are promoting child P, and so the minute surface, we have to arrest whoever came to interact with the financial system, right? So it's one of those things like Bitcoin is used to like launder money and commit crime and all these other things, but people forget this is a pseudonymous network. It's not an anonymous network, right? So you can still track down the person who is propagating those things. So that's an argument against the whole like, well, it can propagate child porn and the weapons or whatever it is, right? So there is a countervailing argument against that position as well. The other like argument like against it is that it may result in chain bloat. In other words, there'll be so much like artifact data going there that there's not going to be enough data for actual financial transactions. So I don't know.
Hmm.
Did you have an instinct about where the penny might drop on that particular point?
It's I know I was gonna say like markets usually self-correct themselves, but that's kind of been debatable the last 20 years. With like just obviously like FTX blowing up and like blue chip AAA companies giving them $100 million checks and not even like asking for like an attestation, and then it blows up, and they wonder why, but they get caught with their pants down. But it's I don't know. I feel like it's I forget who said it, but someone said after the block size war, it's like it was like 2 years afterwards. It's like even though the Bitcoin we have now, like you could say like the Bitcoin Cash is more within Satoshi's vision, the real Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin we have now is what like the community deserves, what the market decided. So same thing too. I think if we find out that these inscriptions are actually becoming almost more valuable than just day trading or selling your satoshis to buy Ethereum or whatever have you. Maybe those are becoming actually more valuable, and that's kind of where the ecosystem's going. I think the market's going to decide that, and that's. I was actually kind of talking with Carl about this this past Sunday at the meetup. I recently read Free Will by Sam Harris. And when I first read it, it's like only 80 pages, and he kind of makes a lot of just brief, not assumptions, but statements, kind of like stove is hot, water's wet. But finished about a week ago, and I was talking with Carl on Sunday. I think that's the thing with crypto. I find myself struggling with. I think a lot of people. I think the market's kind of going to go where it's going. It's like a wave, and we're surfing it right now. We can obviously somewhat control where we go, but I think whatever's going to happen 10 years from now is going to happen, and there's going to be players that affect that and drive it slightly, but it's not gonna be like one person. For example, that's why Satoshi disappeared. They did not want to go to jail like a lot of people did, and then B, Gavin Andreessen talks about this. It's people were flooding him so much, and he's like, "Hey guys, I brought you on the team. I brought you on to help code up Bitcoin because it's not just about me. It's like I'm just human. I have errors." So he kind of disappeared. So the main original Bic devs would mold into what we have now. So I mean, I could, like I said, when Adam Back was like, "Oh, it's just going to turn into stupid ape coins again. It's going to flood the network." I could see that too, but I think I've said this story a couple of times just for the people at home, like TLDR, like do live event concert work in Austin. About a year and a half ago, big band was in town. I was doing backline for it, and when we were doing it, they were like, "Hey, you can either get half your day rate, help us with the back line, do the out, or you can go to the show and get like 30% off." Don't hate the band, just not my cup of tea. My buddy and his girl wanted to go, so I'm like, "Hey, I'll buy it, just cash at me." I think I told you this, like an hour before the show, I'm like on the phone with Ticketmaster trying to give him this, and I'm like, "This is hypothetically my property. I paid for this. Like, why is this so difficult to give to somebody?" So like, for example, if that was on the Bitcoin chain, I could just shoot that to my buddy, and it's like bada bing, done. So that's just one application. Back to the whole CDO with the houses blowing up. But I mean, same thing too. Rome wasn't built overnight. In the next 3 months, if this turns into NFT Circus Soleil shitcoin round two, it wouldn't surprise me. But same thing. Rome wasn't built overnight. 5 years from now, if it's a molded, well polished, just subsection of the Bitcoin, ecosystem, it wouldn't surprise me. But I get why the Adam Backs of the world are nervous, because this could obviously, just turn to Lord of the Flies, like you said, with the NFT, debauchery of the last 12 months. So, but again, the market's going to decide it. So we're just kind of wait and see.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting few months to see how this entire project evolves. My gestalt is that the horse is out of the barn. I think this thing is going to catch on and stay. I don't think it's going anywhere at all. I think it's entirely fair to say that digital artifacts, I think those are the more correct term to use, are, have arrived to Bitcoin. And then the next question is the space going to start utilizing them for use cases more interesting than JPEGs? Or maybe they will, maybe they won't. One of the You were talking about like putting tickets, for example, on the blockchain. Um, I think eventually that'll not be possible because it'll just be so cost prohibitive, right? Because you're competing for your data to be uploaded to the blockchain with like everybody else. A lot of those people are actually doing real Bitcoin transactions. So if we, excuse me, if we forward, say, 10 years and Bitcoin is like $500,000 or $1 million or whatever, then you're going to have people moving $10 million, institutions or whatever, moving $10 million. Anyone moving $10 million is definitely going to be able to compete for mining transaction fees with someone who wants to send like a ticket, a concert ticket, right?
$50
So
ticket. Yeah,
the
true,
game
true.
theory, the game theory says that if Bitcoin gets more valuable, the financial transaction, part of Bitcoin, which is just, trading Bitcoin back and forth, and there's no digital artifacts involved. If Bitcoin becomes very big, and the financial layer will be easily able to outcompete and like do away with the digital artifact part of it. And then when we have a bear market and people are just not trading that much, and there's not a lot of Bitcoin moving around, and then the fees go down because there's just not a lot of people competing for fees, then you have sort of digital artifact space stepping in during bear markets to assist miners with fees in those times, right? So that's again, this is all game theory. This is all people sort of thinking through how all of this would work. The yeah, again, I've been thinking as well. It's like, well, where can this go? I think one of the biggest limitations to it, like scaling to something like say concert tickets or whatever, or mortgages, or just divorce contracts or marriage contracts or whatever it is, right? The thing that will prevent that from really scaling is uh, the fact that the block size is, max at 4 MB, right? Every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, you have the opportunity to put 4 MB, actually 3 MB if we're just counting the witnessed part of the blockchain of the block. Just 3 MB every 10 minutes that's how much allowance you have to put, like, information in there that, you may want to preserve forever. And that's not a lot of space at all, right? In a world where we are just producing a lot of content, you're not going to be able to put a YouTube video in there, for example, right? Or anything that's, even a large JPEG could be 5 MB. Well, you can't put that in there. Sorry. So, given that that's going to be a significant limitation to scaling to do ordinary things like concert tickets, then the next question is, well, whatever ends up, getting on there has got to really be special, right? And maybe that could be art. I don't know. I mean, it's. I was wondering if, in the future, and this is me just like my science fiction hat is on right now. In the future, could it really be that these digital artifacts become the most valuable thing on the blockchain? Because at the end of the day, even if you say, well, Bitcoin is like whatever it is, it's, you're going to go to zero or whatever it's going to go to, you have at least now introduced a second use case for the Bitcoin blockchain, which
Mm-hmm.
is the ability to upload, data of any kind and disseminate it in a censor-resistant, permissionless way. And then the question is, well, what is the use case of that kind of technology, right? So, if, for example, you wanted to be a whistleblower, right, for a government, right, and they were coming after you, and you wanted to make sure, that the information was out there. Why don't you just
Yep.
upload it to the Bitcoin blockchain? It's there forever. No one's ever going to be able to take that down. But again, that's just a science fiction, stuff. If you patent like some protein that could change, life, forever, and you just want to, like, save that event for posterity. Uh, Again, I mean, it could be anything at all. You could uh, a contract between two countries, on the blockchain, because then everyone would know that this is what the contract says. So yeah, it's a very interesting time to be in the space. I think this is the most interested I've ever been in the architecture of like Bitcoin, right? Like, well, how does SegWit work and all this other stuff. It is very interesting to see where this would go. I kind of feel like this is only just starting to leave the station.
Oh yeah,
It really
definitely.
revitalized a lot of interesting. Oh, I have to. I gotta tell you about like the most amazing use case of it so far. I wouldn't call it use case, but so that there's these crypto punks, right? That got like they were one of uh, NFTs on Ethereum. Remember those pixelated crypto punks? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it looked
The
like
ones that
80s rock
sold
stars, all
for.
that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the highly pixelated. So they were all like Ethereum based, of course, as and what somebody did, this is so brilliant. Like it's brilliant, and I'm like, and I'm angry that I didn't like see this before. Like someone showed it to me, right? So this is what they did, right? They said that, okay, what we have done is that we are scanning the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, and we're looking for data that is consistent with the hash of the CryptoPunks JPEG. All right. So in other words, you take the
Mm-hmm.
CryptoPunk JPEG, the original CryptoPunk JPEG, you hash it, and then you upload all that data up to Bitcoin, right, as a digital artifact, right? And then somebody, a blockchain explorer, will scan the blockchain, and if it finds that you have uploaded a CryptoPunk JPEG, that sort of like arbitrary system will say that, okay, this CryptoPunk now lives on the Bitcoin blockchain. It has migrated over. Okay. And and it says we're only going to count the first copy, because I could like upload it the next 5 minutes if I wanted to, right? It's not going to count the second copy. It's not going to count copy number 10,000. Only the first copy counts. So they're going to say that, okay, this Satoshi is assigned to this CryptoPunk. Congratulations, this CryptoPunk belongs to whoever owns this Satoshi, right? Um, and so you have a way of almost stealing meme energy that NFTs, generated in the Ethereum space. You're stealing the meme energy and bringing it over to the Bitcoin space without asking the original CryptoPunk creators for permission. It's really kind of funny because it's not the original CryptoPunk people that did this. It's just some guy who got a JPEG,
Random. W-
they
Well,
uploaded the
this goes
JPEG.
back to the whole value proposition. It's like, is that valuable? Like, okay, yeah, it's not the original guys who made it, but is it valuable? Well, the market's going to decide, and same thing to
Well,
your
the
point. It's
market has decided. So the reason I was bringing this up is that, this only like they started uploading these like just like 3 days ago. I don't even know how long it was. I only discovered the website yesterday, right? And they said that of all the CryptoPunks that are out there, they only like 10% have been uploaded to the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So, but one of them, just yesterday, last night, 24 hours ago, one of those CryptoPunks sold, one of the CryptoPunks on Bitcoin sold for 9.5 Bitcoin. So about a quarter of $1 million it was sold. So somebody bought the Satoshi that were, and what they bought was the Satoshi is what they bought. The Satoshi that was assigned to that CryptoPunk was bought for 9.5 Bitcoin. So the market has already decided that at least for
no,
now,
that's my
they're going
point.
to
There you
consider this
go.
valuable. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy how fast this whole thing is moving. You're going to see the Board Ape Yacht Club on there real fast. I think they're already being
Oh
uploaded
yeah,
as we
bet your
speak.
ass, yeah.
So those are also coming. What else is coming? I don't really know, but this is really like I think a very exciting sort of space to watch. And again, I don't know if this is a flash in the pan, if this is a doorway to something even more innovative to come,
Mm-hmm.
because now you have proof of concept, right? And just like in Ethereum, you had proof of concept. That proof of concept was sort of hijacked or taken over by JPEGs. Is the Bitcoin community going to do something that's more substantial, JPEGs, or are they also happy just doing JPEGs? I don't. Time is going to tell, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and one thing you hit on too, I think, not that this would be a backup plan, but one of the things, and it's kind of debatable. Like, there's different message boards show different things, but one of the main reasons, besides the 2008 bailout, Satoshi made Bitcoin, is we are entering a digital age, and the problem with that is just everything was copy and paste, right? So it's like, how do you take value from just legacy 2000 prior into the digital realm and still keep things valuable. And I think it was Cedric Dale or Dahl. I don't know if he used to post a lot of stuff back in 2016, 17. I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff, but he lives out, I think, in like Santa Barbara. He used to be a banker, but he's like a hippie guy now, drinks kombucha. But he used to make really, really good like 10-minute TED Talk videos just about like we say, what is value, what is money. But one thing he talked about right before the NFT stuff started kicking off, is people were kind of bashing on it, like, oh, this is Board Yacht Club, this is like a red rock, this is stupid. But and again, we talked about like some of it really wasn't on chain, but let's just assume this is like a red rock, it's on chain, it's going for 200K. He said that the main reason that's valuable is because, like, for example, what's the Mona Lisa go for? It's been appraised at like what, like $500 million or something like that. You and I can go on Amazon tonight, get like a replica size, looks great for like $50, right? Well, if anyone comes over our places, they're obviously gonna be like, "Oh, that's a nice replica." Like, even if they don't say it, they'll be like, "Oh, that's nice," but in their head, they know it's not the real one. Why? Because there's only one. So that's like what Cedric was talking about with like, and even some original posts by Satoshi. It's like, uh, not that to your point, like our backup plan would be we become like a weird art gallery, but if we can start putting stuff on the blockchain and it's actually on the blockchain, verifiable with a Satoshi with a number, it's like, that's something that is eluding. I mean, even for example, now like with just the piracy stuff with movies and everything, and obviously, like we said, with the size limitations, that's a whole other thing in itself. But this could be like the first time. Like I know what you said, like NFTs is kind of a sour word now, but this could be like the first time NFTs, get done right. And with that said, I guess like we always say, it no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But do you think this could, in the next 6 months, if it takes off, it could give us a mini crypto bull market, or do you think there's still too much macro stuff going on, or do you think that this would take until 24 25 to actually see the, just the up to the right side effects of it?
I don't know, man. In my mind, I draw no connection between this digital artifact, digital artifact project and the price. I have no idea what the price is going to do at all. Maybe it'll go up, maybe it'll go down. Uh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd,
But
I'll say,
just to
yeah.
expand further on this idea, being able to upload basically like random data, not random data, but it could be any kind of data to the Bitcoin blockchain and basically put it there forever is it's fun to think about. Again, putting my science fiction hat on. If Bitcoin is still around 50 years, or let's put it, if Bitcoin is around in 20 years, it's probably going to be around for 2,000 years. Like, maybe not, but likely it's going to stick around. If it's going to be around for the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be around for a lot longer. And so you imagine a future where Bitcoin is, 1,000 years old, just again, science fiction time. Uh, and, you have all that data stored on the Bitcoin blockchain in a decentralized way. You basically have, you basically have like a perfect ledger of like 1,000 years worth of transactions, but also 1,000 years worth of all sorts of data, uh, almost like archaeological. It would be like technological archaeology. Like, oh, 2023, Doug uploaded, this picture. Who's this Doug guy, right? Or this year, some guy uploaded his biography, right? Like he decided he just wanted his story told. He writes his whole life story and he puts it on the blockchain because motherfuckers, you need to know. you know
Motherfucker.
and this could also be
Could,
a way of preserving information in a way that for example, like if you mentioned this many times to me, if society collapses tomorrow, do we even have the knowledge required to be able to like build a car, computer, a generator, right? So this would be sort of a system where you have an incentive to disseminate data in a decentralized way, where everyone has incentive to do it, right? I mean, all the miners and all the nodes, they believe in this project. It's a decentralized system. There's thousands of copies. There'll be more copies in the future as well. And this, there's there's an incentive mechanism for uh, basically having a decentralized database where any kind of information, like how to reboot civilization, could be stored, and all
make
you
a
need to access that
capacitor,
information
yeah.
is a Bitcoin node. Yeah, make a capacitor, whatever the data is. It could yeah, because we don't have that here, right? I mean, you have like governments,
That's what I mean.
that
Yeah.
have, yeah, like basically regenerative kits. Like this is how you would build society back up again. But we don't have that in a decentralized fashion. Not that we would hopefully ever need it, but even if we decided to start uploading this sort of information, it would be at least of historical significance. Fast forward 100 years or 1,000 years, right? Like, oh, this is what these people were thinking back then, right? If it's stored on the Bitcoin blockchain. So maybe maybe 15 years from now, and these ordinals and inscriptions are extremely expensive to mint, right? Because Bitcoin is at $10 million, and that's what you're competing with, right? Maybe the stuff that gets in there, the witness part, is just incredibly valuable data, right? It's like some stuff that humanity says, listen, we need to store this in a decentralized way. How do we do it? Well, let's put it on Bitcoin, right? Maybe that's what gets in there 10 years from now. So again, the implications of this are like you can just do a thought experiments after thought experiments about where this could go. But besides just monkey JPEGs, there's other potential exciting ways this could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean to bring the like conversation like full circle. I mean that's kind of why like in the last week, and it's Twitter. It's designed to be a pissing contest. You do not go on Twitter to have an intellectual 2 hour discussion. You know, like we were all having the other night at your place. But that's why just like Adam Back and a lot of guys were just getting real pissy at first. I mean, you and I are pretty smart dudes, but compared to like some of these Bitcoin devs and other people, you know, it's like, but in the last hour, just a thought experiment, we've come up with like three or four ideas. And to our point, you know, I guess outside of a solar flare, you know, maybe that could screw everything, but this could be like a time capsule. And I mean, I even just thought of
Yeah.
this like when you were going over your thought experiment, like you know, this whole Neuralink is going to be something, and there could be an issue in the future where like let's just say like Google and Facebook have their own like Neuralink, just like hard drives, for lack of a better word. Like, you know, I'm not techie, so I'm pulling this out of my ass as I go. But just like, but if you want to download, let's say, a pack from them, well, it's Google and Facebook. They have their own interests, prerogatives, biases. But you're like, I don't really know what's actually behind the hood on that. So maybe you almost want to like Wikipedia gamble, and you're like, well, if I'm going to do this Neuralink download, if like you said, if there's stuff on the Bitcoin blockchain, everyone's put it up, so you're like, oh, I know it's on there. I'm just gonna, you know, zip and download. So it's and that's what kind of got me. It's a lot of the guys were pissy to it. It's like in the last 30 minutes, we've come up with three or four ideas where, I mean, like you and I are like smart dudes, but like you give this some really really smart people, you give them 5 years to stretch this out. It you know it could be like reinventing the light bulb again. So it's but I'm like I think you said at the beginning, I'm agnostic right now, but I am just like even like when I started seeing some tweets about it in our little conversation, I'm like this could be cool in 5 or 10 years because it Bitcoin has enough mass and weight behind it, and if we get the like you said the integration right, where we're maybe cross chain bringing stuff over from Ethereum, other stuff, this could be like again, I like your point, digital artifacts, but NFTs is the first time like digital artifacts actually get done right, and that would be like the first time ever where we have digital value that's scarce, like fungible and provable all at the same time. So it's like kind of like, you know, breaking news why Satoshi made Bitcoin, because that was something that was needed really bad after 2008.
Yeah, and I've also detected some of the Bitcoin maxis acting back. Uh, Pierre Rochard, I think is his name. I think he's sort of like become a bit less confrontational. I think the I think some of the maxis that I listened to at times, they were saying, well, listen, you know, we can stop this. In fact, one of them, I think Pierre made this point is that, listen, Bitcoin cannot be controlled by governments. It cannot be controlled by developers. It cannot be controlled by miners. And hey, look, it's not controlled by maxis either, because you got this, you know, NFT guy coming over and bringing all these, you know, monkey JPEGs over to Bitcoin. We don't like it, but we can't stop it either. Like, here you go. This
Yeah,
is
sucks
proof
to
that this
suck.
is a permissionless. Yeah. And so I think they've sort of revised their initial uh, resistance to a large extent. I don't think they're as resistant as they were. I think they're starting to come around and like, well, this could also have a lot of useful properties, such as supporting miners during downturns, so they have an alternative source of revenue as well. And you know, the block size is not actually going to increase because that's still stuck at 4 MB, right? So the only thing that might change is that, well, the mean pool might get full, you know, filled up, you know, but then that's where capitalism kicks in, and the the people can sort of just compete for offering more fees for miners. So there's free market ways around a lot of the objections that they were getting at, right? It's interesting to see, you know, we're very early days. I mean, the idea of ordinals, I think Rod Armour came up with them about a year ago. I think is the first time that he's really like developed it into something, and it's taken off over just the last, I think, 2 or 3 weeks is when it's really taken off. And I sort of expect that its growth is going to be quite exponential. I think you're going to see. I'm making a prediction right now. Yuga Labs, you know, the guys behind Board API Club, they're coming into this space. Um, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me if you start to see people talk about migrating entirely to Bitcoin as NFTs. You know, and it'd be interesting because these NFTs are kind of purer in some real sense than the Ethereum-based NFTs, which are not even hosted on the Ethereum blockchain, right? So In some sense, NFTs will be a lot scarcer on Bitcoin because, like I said, one transaction is one NFT or digital artifact than there will be ever be on Ethereum. So yeah, it's interesting to sort of in theory out where this is all headed. But it seems like it's the space to watch it. At least is resulting in some excitement during the bear market. It is like a new innovative thing, and it's truly new. It's a very ingenious sort of protocol that this guy invented. It seems like people are really taking to it, and it's a real thing. I think he did a very good job figuring out how to work within Bitcoin's current parameters and bring NFTs to it. I think it's pretty. Maybe he'll come on the podcast and talk to us about it one day. We
No,
can
no,
only hope.
that'd be cool, but it's yeah. I mean, it's one thing you said. I think just something that's like funny to end on. It's like it's funny. There's the gatekeepers in Bitcoin, and then there's also they want to keep it tried and true, but they also want to get mass adoption. And there's a I think James Lope was some of them. I guess like Nick said, but like a lot of the original cypherpunks, they actually worked on other projects, and then they brought stuff into Bitcoin. So it's like it's funny how people 18 months ago in the bull market was in a rage. Oh, Bitcoin's pet rock. It's a boomer coin, old and slow. Well, it's funny, all the mania stuff, to your point, maybe we get to the next bull market and now all this stuff is just raging away on Bitcoin because like same thing, there could be bottleneck issues, blah blah blah, like we said. But people know if they take the board ape yacht club and they throw it onto Bitcoin, that's not going anywhere between now and the next bull market. So it's it's rock solid, going to be safe. But no, it's going to be interesting, man. And like, not that we were due for an upgrade. I don't even know if you can call this an upgrade, just a evolution, whatever. But I mean, yeah, stuff was pretty dry for a while, and obviously, I'm with you. I think no one knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months. For all we know is like this could pick up adoption and the price of Bitcoin keeps dropping just because that's how markets work. But this could definitely be a catalyst to help us just not like resurge, but just give us actual ammunition going to the next bull market. Because the last 12 months we've had a lot of blood, we've had a lot of shit slinged at us. There's the whole SEC Kraken thing going on right now. So hopefully this actually, like you said, this gets pretty hard adoption because we need some fuel going in. Besides the halving, we need some fuel going to the next bull market because we got some wounds we're licking right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You can't really do much about the bear market. It's going to be a bear market until it's not staying a bear market. Maybe it'll be the rest of the year, maybe not. Who knows? I'm not sure
Bull
that
market
this
tomorrow.
particular project, well, I'm not sure that this particular project will increase or decrease the price of Bitcoin. I think I don't know that there's enough capital coming in just from this alone to actually move the
Mm-hmm.
price. And the only sort of money that is spent, like on Ethereum, you have to spend gas fees, right? But over here, you just spend the normal Bitcoin transaction fee, uh, and you don't actually have to spend Bitcoin except the one Satoshi and of course the transaction fee, right? But that's all you spend. So it's not as if like doing this is going to sort of burn, like Satoshis. Like that's not a thing. Uh, so I'm not sure if it is going to cause the price to go up because as a protocol, even if it's working great and it's adopting very quickly, it doesn't do any to move the price. It doesn't consume Bitcoin. In other words, the rate's high enough to move the price. And uh, that's where you can make the use case of it being most useful in a bear market because when things are quite down and there's not a lot of Bitcoin mining activity, you've got this other thing you could do instead now with
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin, right? So in a deep bear market when no one is, well, you got another thing now that can get the miners to generate fees and keep themselves afloat, which is great, right? That could be probably why the Pierre and Adam back probably stepped down. They're like, hold on a second, this is actually pretty good for Bitcoin security purposes, right? Because
It's almost like
if a miner
another
goes
layer of like
bankrupt, that's not good for anyone.
decentralization.
Yeah, it's
Like
another
another
sort of mining
incentive, yeah.
incentive. Exactly right. Yeah, so we'll see where it goes. Uh, but yeah, I think this is definitely the a space to watch for at least the next few weeks to see where it's going to go. But I don't know, man. Do you have any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, man. I mean, yeah, like we went down a rabbit hole about this. Yeah, got work the next couple of days, but definitely for the Super Bowl, man, I'm probably gonna do some homework on this because, like I said, just Twitter, I've seen some stuff on it, but there was some stuff you were telling me where it's like, okay, I need to go because now I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, there's the price of it, but then I'm like, also, let's just say. like obviously it wouldn't be an issue like if I had it on a Trezor, but let's just say you send me one, but then can I unsign that and then make a new? So definitely, I got the gears going now. So there's some homework I want to do, but not to your point, man. It's like the bear markets are nice, they're quiet, but they also get dry. So it's good to see there's something happening. So yeah, the next week or so, I'm gonna do
Yeah,
some more
definitely.
homework on this because I just got some gears going right now. So just gonna do some digging and go down the never ending rabbit hole. But now, man, I think we touched a good base on it, man. So it's always a good voiding, price in a bear market. And like I said, I don't know if you want to call it an upgrade, but it's good to see even in a bear market, there's real shit going on in Bitcoin. Whether it's going to be fruitful, like you said, the market's going to decide in 12 months, but at least we got something happening.
All right, man. Good talk. I'll see you in a few days in person when I get back to office.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Atif, always a pleasure, brother. Safe travels, and I'll catch you around, man.